stator and regulator install on a 98 KLR650. We're going to do a 280 watt high output stator. Our part number is G450. They're available on our website for $130. We're also going to do a high power handling regulator. Our part number is R260. And this is a really nice kit for the KLR650. Tons of power output. You can run heated grips, GPS, all sorts of stuff on your DC system. Extremely reliable and a really nice setup for the KLRs. Alex has been riding this bike for about a year, all over the country. He's done, where have you gone?
Alaska, all the way down through Seattle, starting in New York, down to Baja, all the way down to the southern tip of Cabo, and back up here into San Diego. Did 30,000 miles last year, and I'm up to about 12,000 miles this year.
So this bike's seen a lot of time. It's been really reliable. He's running a Schnitz Racing 705 kit on it. So it's a really good example of a bike that's really going to see use from a high output stator upgrade. So we're going to give you the basics on it, show you how to do the install for the stator and regulator, and hopefully this will help you doing one on your bike. Okay, first step on the KLR, really easy to get the bodywork off on this guy. We have 2 bolts to take each of the side panels off, right here, right here. Phillips screws, all you need is a Phillips screwdriver, each of those. We already have them loose here. Then you just pop the side panel off. Same for the right side of the bike. Then all we've got is a 10mm mounting bolt for each side of the seat. So throw a socket on there, get them off, and get the seat off. Next step is get the tank off. This is a large, what type of tank it is?
It's aftermarket IMS tank.
IMS tank. So uses the same stock mounts, which are 2 10mm bolts right here. Really easy to do. Pop those off, undo your fuel line.
Yep, and the stock tank also has these plastic cowlings on the front here. On either side, the radiator shrouds that have a bolt on the top and a bolt on the bottom, I believe. Those what took them off.
So you can figure it out on your stock tank, but we're going to pull the bolts back here and go ahead and lift the tank off. So tank's off, seat's off, side panels are off. Next step on this bike, if you have a skid plate, you're going to need to go ahead and pull that so we can access the stator side cover. So we're going to go ahead and pull the skid plate right now. So one of the final steps before we can pull the side case is to go ahead and remove the shift lever here. You don't have to do it. There's probably enough room to get the side case off, but it makes it a little easier to give yourself some more working room. Shift lever comes off with a single 10mm bolt right here. I've already loosened it, but you do need to remove the bolt all the way, as there is a little catch ridge inside, so even if the shifter comes loose, or the bolt comes loose, the shifter won't walk its way off. You can see the little ridge right there, which this bolt actually sits in as it's screwed in. So went ahead and removed that. Slide the shifter right off. And that's it. Now this guy, your front sprocket cover, you need to remove this too, as the wire exit for the stator, the grommet, is right here underneath it. So real simple to get off. We've got 2 bolts right underneath here, 10mm, and a single 10. Pop those off and remove the sprocket cover. Here's your wire exit for the stator right here. And okay, skid plate has been removed. Next step is go ahead and drain the oil, and then we're going to pull the stator side cover. So we're going to go ahead and drain the oil from the crankcase on this. Single bolt up underneath on the crankcase. Simple to drain, so we're going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll get a shot of pulling the cover. So we've got most of the bolts out now, 8mm bolts for the side case. I'm going to pull the last 4 here. We've already loosened the side case, so it should pop right off now. On the KLR, all the mounting bolts for the side case are the same length, so there's not really any need to mark them. They can go in any location. So we've got all these loose, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the last 4. And now we're just going to go ahead and work the side case loose. Now if you do this carefully, you can usually get the gasket to come off in one piece and be alright and reuse it. But it's always safe to have an extra gasket just in case. So now we've got it loose. Here's your original KLR stator. What's nice about the KLR is the stator mounts to the outer side case, so there's no need for a flywheel puller. Really simple job. Our gasket looks like it's in good shape. It stayed here. We're going to go ahead and replace the gasket anyways. We have a spare just to be safe, but if you can do it in one piece, it's not really a big deal. So it's up to you, but if you do have an extra gasket, not a bad idea. The KLR is pretty simple. Your pickup coil is a separate, totally separate piece, separate wiring harness, so there's not any need to remove that. Be removed is this extra wire right here. That's your neutral switch and plugs into a little pin on the side of the engine here. So you can grab it with 2 fingers and just pull it right out. It's a little greasy on this bike, but nothing wrong with it. So we pop that out. So now that we have our side case loose, I'm going to go ahead and unplug the pickup coil connector, which is right here on the right side of the bike. Just a simple plug right here, undo that, through the mount. Slide it straight out. Now our whole assembly is ready to replace the stator. Okay, so here's the KLR side case on the bench. We're going to start by taking the gasket off. So if your gasket's in decent shape, you can reuse it. This one's in pretty nice shape and comes off in one piece, but we're going to go ahead and replace it anyways with a new one. To get the stator out, you just need to remove 3 mounting bolts. These are 5mm Allen head bolts. We've already loosened them. If your stator's never been out, you're probably going to need to use a ratchet with a long throw on it, because these have Loctite from the factory, so they're really going to be tight. You need to use one of these to break them loose. So I'm going to pull those. Your stator will now lift straight out, but you also need to remove the wire clamp, which is a single Phillips head. Pull that. Remove your wire clamp. Now go ahead and pop your grommets out. Top one is for your pickup coil, which is all a separate assembly from the stator, so you don't need to remove that. You can just slide it out of the way. Then remove your stator grommets. Pop right out. And remove your stator. So slide this out of the way real quick. We'll compare the stock stator to the RaceTech Electric stator. So they're built similarly. You have your ignition poles here, which are the 2 wrapped coils. The ignition on the KLR runs in AC, which means it's powered directly off the stator from these 2 poles. So what that means is your bike doesn't rely, the ignition system does not rely on the DC side, the battery system. So if your charging coils ever died, you could still technically start the bike, because the bike ignition runs directly off these 2 poles of the stator. The problem on the KLR is it doesn't have a kick start, so you're relying on an electric starter. So you would have to bump start the bike, but it will run an AC directly off the stator. Anyways, comparing the 2 stators, the difference mainly with the RaceTech Electric stators, we use a larger gauge wire on the charging poles, and it's only about 1 wire size thicker than the stock one, but that makes quite a bit of difference. We wind all the poles as full as we can, and we get about 280 watts average and a peak of about 306 watts at redline, or a little lower. I think we're looking at like 55 to 6,000 RPM, and we'll get up to 306 watts out of this stator. This stator will also do 286 watts at about 3,500 to 3,800 RPM, I believe, which gives you a lot of power output at cruising RPM, at a real usable RPM the bike's at a lot of the time. So other than that, your wire clamps are in the same spot, ignition poles are in the same spot, the stators are direct bolt in, and you'll see a pretty nice increase in power. So we'll get this out of the way. Now we're going to go ahead and mount the new stator. Drops right in. Make sure you clock it so your wires are exiting the same place the originals did. Line up your grommets and slide those into their position. Then you want to go ahead and run your pickup coil wire. Put the grommets back in place. And go ahead and put our wire clamp back in. Slides right over. Make sure you have it mounted covering the wires completely. Now, on every bolt that's used in the stator mounting, you want to make sure you use red Loctite on every single one. It's really critical that you do that, because if any of these bolts ever work their way loose, tons of vibration in the engine while it's running. And if these ever work their way loose, you could be in a lot of trouble, result in a lot of engine damage. So make sure you run a line of red Loctite on every single mounting bolt you're putting back in. Tighten that up. Now we're going to Loctite each of the mounting bolts. Make sure the stator's lined up, clocked correctly. Now, these don't need to be super tight, but you want to make sure they're good and snug. The side case is pretty soft, so you can strip these if you do them too tight. So get them all tight, go back around with one more pass and another 1/8 of a turn or so just to pull them in. Alright, so we've got the stator mounted. We're going to go ahead and get the new gasket on. We're going to put a layer of gasket sealer around this. Make sure you clean off the edges of the side case. Get them spotless so your new gasket seats well. We're going to put a little layer here of gasket sealer in between the grommets just so they fit really tight. The grommets are up high on the side case, so there's not much risk of leak here, but this is just cheap insurance. So we'll do that, get them pressed in place. Now we're going to just run a thin layer. Okay, so we got a layer of gasket sealer all around the outside here. If you have the dowel pins on the side case, it makes it real easy to locate the new gasket. So we're going to go ahead and line that up, drop it on, and just tap it down with your fingers. Make sure you line up all the bolt holes. And your gasket sealer will pull it right down and keep it in place. So if you take the extra time to do it this way, there's no way you're going to get a leak, especially with the new gasket. Now we're going to just run one more thin bead of gasket sealer on the other side, and then we'll get the side case back on the bike. Alright, so we've got the side case ready to go. I got our new gasket on. Everything's clean. We've got gasket sealer on both sides. So we're ready to go ahead and get the side case back on, get the stator in. First thing, get your neutral switch back on, which just line that up and press it on to the little knob. So that's connected, ready to go. Now, I'm just going to rotate the case. And you can help by lining up the stator first. The stator will, flywheel magnets will suck the stator in. So it's not too much of a job to get it lined up. As soon as your dowel pins line up, the whole thing will just press in. Okay, so now that the stator's mounted, to route your wires, you want to tuck in the pickup coil wire first and then the stator harness next. So you see this little ridge right here? Runs right along here. So make sure your pickup coil wires exit, and you want to get them behind the ridge and tucked right up there. Then you're going to put the stator wire in. You want to flatten it as thin as you can and fit it into this little crease. So you get it in there, you can use a blunt screwdriver and just kind of press it in. Make sure you don't poke through the sheath and damage the wires at all, but just gentle pressure and you can get the wires up there in the ridge. So now that these wires are routed correctly, we're going to go ahead and put the sprocket cover back on. So you see your notch here, this covers the grommets and the wire exits. So you're just going to maneuver it back into place, get the bottom in first.
And now I can't even get the fucking thing in there. I'm like, how did I even get it in the first place? It's a trip, dude.
And slide it back into place. We're going to put our bolts back in. And get those started. Okay, stator's mounted. We're going to go ahead and route the cables, plug in the stator connector. Just going to route this up along the side of the carb. Right along here. Cross under the down tube. And then plug into a connector right here. Just like that. And we'll just run some zip ties on the harness. Okay, and then we are going to run the pickup coil plug, following the same path. And that comes right back up through here on the clip. Plug that back in. And then we'll zip tie that up along the stator plug, and then we're ready to do the regulator. Okay, we're going to go ahead and replace the regulator now. Real simple. Undo the plug. Pop that out. We have two 10mm bolts and 10mm nuts on the bottom. So, put that on. Here's the mounting nuts. I've already loosened those, but each one's a 10mm. So pull those off. And remove the regulator. Now, depending on the year of your KLR, our replacement regulator is taller. So if you compare them side by side, overall they're about the same height, but the difference is in the mounting height. So you'll see the bolt depth is going to be taller on our regulator versus the stock KLR regulator. So some years this will happen, some years the stock hardware will work just fine. So on this bike, we're just replacing the hardware with a 30mm length, and it's a 6mm by 1 pitch thread. So real simple. We're going to put those in. Line up the mounting holes, and then we're going to put our nuts back on the bottom.
Gotta be somewhere, right? A direction.
I've got to go to work for Google.
You're in Texas now. I got fucking camping my food there right now. I gotta call him tonight and see if my window, I think the only window is just
Got the regulators mounted. You go ahead and plug in the connector. Put that in the slot. And you're ready to go. A quick way to test the system so you can verify all your new components are working correctly. What you want to do is take a multimeter. A good digital multimeter is preferable, like this Fluke. You're going to set it to the DC voltage setting, which is usually a V with a flat line above it. What you want to do is connect your meter leads to the battery terminals. So we got negative and positive right there. Now we're reading battery voltage. This is a fully charged battery, so we're reading 13 volts, which is good. This is a really nice Odyssey battery too. So now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and fire up the bike. And what we want to do is measure battery voltage as we increase RPM. Stator, you should see idle at the high 12s, even 13 volts. Okay, as we increase RPMs up over about 2,500, should easily be hitting over 14 volts. And what you want to do, see your new regulator capped by about 14.9 volts maximum. And what we want to see is that our battery voltage increases correctly and then drops back down to idle just fine. And since we see it idle at about 13 volts and increase up to 14.8 or so, we know the new stator's working just fine and your regulator's working just fine. And that's it. That's how you do a stator and regulator swap on a KLR650. We're going to put the seat and side covers back on, bolt it back together, and you're ready to go. So any parts you need, you can find us at www.RaceTechElectric.com. You can call us at 619-928-9015 and check out Alex on ADV Writer and read all about it.